Hey everyone, my name is Sam. Thanks for checking out this video. If you get to the end and enjoyed it, then give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe, and the bell notification button. I want to tell you about the books that I read this week. I actually read a fair amount this week, and I literally I film on this video on Saturdays, and I just finished a book this morning too. But I already have enough books to review on this video, so I'll just, instead of squishing it into this one, it'll be next week. But I want to tell you all about the books that I read this week. So first off, I reread The Cruel Prince because everyone just hypes about it so much. I read it the first time. I never thought it was a bad book. I was just confused. Like, when you see people reselling like the Barnes & Noble exclusive editions, which they're doing a reprint of them, and I think they sold out of the reprint already, like the pre-order, so they have to order more. I just don't get the way people fangirl about it to that extent, right? So I gave it a second reread. So it follows these three sisters who grew up in the human world, but everything goes to hell in a handbasket very quick when they find out that their oldest sister is actually fairy, and her biological father shows up to take her back to that world and brings them all there. And it's a very elitist society, and they're looked down upon because they are not from the fairy world. And it's a lot of political stuff of this world, and passing on the heir lineage thing is a little bit weird and out of the norm of how we did things in the colonial West. So that being said, it's an enjoyable book. I really like all of the politics. It's really fleshed out in the last third or so. There's a lot of twists and turns. There's a lot of reveal and confusion and chaos. I like that. Is it worth selling your Barnes & Noble exclusive cover edition for $300 US? No, I'm sorry. I just don't get all of that. Yeah, I don't quite get, like, the publisher was basically forced to move up the release of the third book because people want it so desperately, which I don't think I've honestly ever seen that before, or it's very rare. So I'm just a little confused as to what's not connecting with me on. If you're one of those people who, like, owns 14 different versions of Cruel Prince, can you, like, explain to me why it is, like, specifically, like, such it's one of those books that people basically have collector's editions of it. Why is that? Like, what's so special about it? Why is it different from the other fairy fantasy YA books that we have? I'd just be curious to know, because I honestly don't get it. It's no disrespect. I know there are books that I would, like, high-key collect nonstop that other people aren't gonna like, or people are just like, no, it was cool, but not that cool. I feel like I'm just confused. Then I picked up The Arc of the Language of Fire by Stephanie Hemphill. I don't know if it's a Hemphill or Hemphill, but she's actually a Prince Honor winner writer, so I was just more curious about that. But it's in verse. It's the story of Joan of Arc. It says Joan of Arc reimagined. I'm not totally sure what part of it is reimagined, because, like, this seems quite historically accurate from what I remember. I never in-depth studied Joan of Arc, but it's pretty, like, dead on from what I recollect. I love, especially, so this whole book is about 500 pages, just under 500 pages. I am immensely impressed. So if you didn't know, Joan of Arc was set basically, like, near the tail end of the 100 Years' War, and the 100 Years' War was this, like, actually it was a little bit more than 100 years, really, of non-stop skirmishes between England and France. A lot of the time there's parts of France that England always wants. England was a massive empire, and they always looking to expand. So there was a lot of times when France seemed to be losing, and there was a lot of chaos in France because of lineage and kings dying when their heirs were quite young, and then people don't know exactly who to align themselves with. And when you constantly have this turnover and instability, it's really hard to stay loyal, which is kind of the appeal of having an heir, like, who lives as long as, like, Elizabeth the Great. Like, they live long times. Like, you have a little bit of political stability, which is much more appeasing than a lot of the time, like, in these centuries now. We have a bit more separation of church and state, especially in Canada, but, like, when you look at something like Henry VIII, that you had to flip-flop religions too when there's a new king in. So it's very difficult to stay in power a lot of this time, and it's a lot of political maneuvering. So the author manages to very succinctly and very, like, briefly, she doesn't go into full detail, but in, like, literally I think it's like 4 pages, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a half we'll say the front. So 5 pages explains like the political structure and atmosphere that Joan of Arc was in. That was incredibly helpful if you're not someone who knows a lot about the 100 Years' War or Joan of Arc. You just know that there was a Joan of Arc. That was incredibly helpful, and she did it really succinctly, and obviously didn't have all the information there, but it's the information that you needed to know at the time. I really enjoyed this. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. It starts when Joan is a little bit younger, and she starts hearing what she finds and believes to be God telling her that she is a chosen one, and she's going to lead France to have King Charles and be independent from England. But it's quite interesting because her family, when she is younger, before she becomes the Joan of Arc, I shouldn't say, I mean, she dies when she's like 19, which is not all that old. When she is younger, she's the oddball. She doesn't fit in with a lot of, for the time period, she is quite a feminist. She is still very, very devoutly religious, which I feel like was an interesting thing that was straddled in this book. Because when I think of especially Catholicism and how it's used in politics, especially in this time period, it's very sexist against women. And so I feel like it was quite interesting that she was able to, in this time period, detach politics, the way she kind of detaches politics and religion, and she kind of just sticks to her guns on that. Like, she doesn't see religion as quite a sexist thing that puts her down. She sees it as something that raises her up, which I feel like is an inherently interesting part of Joan of Arc. Spoiler alert, she dies at 19, like I said. But it's quite interesting that you kind of are with her near the end of through the trial process, and you see that they've literally set her up to fail, and it's this whole thing of she wears pants, and they make her swear that she'll never wear pants again, and she goes to sleep. She's supposed to be under like church guard, but they don't put her under the church guard. They put her under the political prison thing still, and she wakes up and her dress is gone, and her only clothes she has are pants that she can wear. So they literally make it so that she either doesn't have clothes in a prison cell with 3 male guards or something like that, or she has to put pants on and therefore violate the contract she signed, and then that's how they justify killing her. It's insane, and medieval, I guess, is this in medieval ages or this before medieval ages? I don't know. We'll just say medieval ages. Immensely messed up. But I feel like it says a lot about, like, just, I feel like it does a really good job, and, like, does just exemplify why she has survived all these years, why her story has survived all of these years, and why their church was eventually pressured into making her a saint. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I want more historical fictions that are written in verse. I've read this and White Rose really recently, and they both, verse writing just lends itself really well to historical fictions. So if you know of a historical fiction written in verse other than White Rose and The Language of Fire, please put it below or send it to me in DMs or something like that. I'm gonna kind of go with searching and hunting and find more of these. Then I listened along to the audiobook for The Family Romanov by Candace Fleming. This is the explanation of Nicholas II and the downfall of the Romanovs, and it kind of very briefly at the end kind of brings us up to 2014 era of where we stand with the Romanovs now and the whole Anastasia myth. This book was actually really well written. I feel like Nicholas II is a very complex, that time period with everything that happens in Russia with the Civil War and the World Wars going on at the same time, and the emancipation of serfdom and how that had trickled into it. It's just pure chaos, in all honesty, and he's kind of set up to fail. Some of it you kind of knew in advance, like serfdom was gotten rid of before him, but he was still dealing with the repercussions of serfdom. Serfdom was a long-standing institution, and they were still running an absolute monarchy, and he was not trained to do this. His father did not train him to become Tsar. And then we have the Civil War gearing up and the World Wars, which we know now, looking back. I can even tell you now, we're probably going to have another World War within the next 50 years. I'd be surprised if we didn't. So, I mean, but they didn't know that World War I and World War II were coming. And it's just, the World War I and World War II took their tolls on the economy and the populations alone in England and France and Germany. But then on top of that, have a civil war going on and have a massive whole, not just a shift from one Tsar to the other, but they actually tried to change their entire government structure. And it's just, I feel kind of bad for him. But it is also explained here. I feel like the Romanov book that I read by Nadine Brandes glossed over it a lot and made it seem like a very romanticized thing. It is a fiction, but Nicholas was not by any means innocent. He was much more innocent than someone like his father, and he was misdirected because he was not trained. He just kind of followed like his uncle and all these people, but they weren't adapting to the time, so that he was set up to fail. I think the most interesting part of this to me was that at the end it talks about they finally found all of the Romanov bodies. They still haven't buried them all in St. Petersburg Cathedral with the rest of them. So they buried, like, they found the original mass grave with was it 2 of the children, 3 servants, maids, and then Nicholas and his wife. But there are 2 bodies missing, and that's where the Anastasia myth comes from. They think it was Litsy and Anastasia. There's a disagreement between, like, researchers of whether it was Marie, her sister, or it was Anastasia that was in the separate grave. But decades later, they find the separate grave, and they unhaul it, and they've done DNA testing. They've looked through, they've gone through the old skeletons of the older Tsars, too, that Nicholas is descendant of, and they've verified that they are all Romanovs. They are all the family Romanov, the children, and they're all Nicholas and her children. And the church still blocks them from burying the last 2 because they said they don't have enough evidence, even though there's DNA evidence that they're all connected. So they still, to this day, I was researching it, they still have not buried the last 2 with the rest of the family. And I know, especially in Russia, the church is very much tied to the Kremlin, so I don't know if that is maybe why. Maybe Putin doesn't want it, maybe because he is, I mean, he's Democratic. He's not democratically elected. He's a dictator. So I'm wondering if maybe that's something that would not be popular within Russia, whereas in the West it's just common sense of if it's DNA evidence, it's DNA evidence. But the church keeps saying that they don't have enough evidence, but then they won't tell them what more evidence that they need. It's very confusing. It kind of makes me angry. But this is interesting nonetheless. This is a really good brief explanation of everything that led to the fall of the Romanov dynasty, like 300-year-long thing, and it just crumbled. So if you're interested in it, I would recommend this one. I think I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars. I really did enjoy it. I also very quickly ran through A Conspiracy of Kings by Megan Whalen Turner. I love this series. It gets better with each book, and I finally I figured out why I love this series so much. The books are as exactly long as they need to be. And I know that's a weird thing to notice, but it's something I find a lot of books struggles with, that their publishers like, no, it needs to be an extra 50 pages, or they're like, no, get rid of this. They didn't seem to do that with this book. All of the information you need is there. There are no long gaps where nothing happens, but there also seems to be a decent amount, like, I don't really think she uses any large time jumps either, of, oh, and then like 40 days later they arrived in wherever. So I think, I don't know if she extremely well thought out the geography of this world and the politics of this world and the plot for long periods of time before actually putting pen to paper. But it seems like that, and I really appreciate that of these books. They're not excessively long, and I feel like her writing really lends itself to being brief, succinct, and to the point. I loved the ending of this especially, and the ending just threw me nonstop, and I am so excited to read. The last one I think I need to read is Thick as Thieves. I think that's what the next one is. I don't actually own it yet. I don't even know if it's out in paperback, but I have to get to it soon. And then I'll be caught up on the series and just have to wait till, I think it's March 2020 for the last book. I also picked up Empress by S.J. Kinshead. This is the sequel to The Diabolic, and oh my god, this book hurt. So it picks up where Diabolic left off. Diabolic has a big cliffhanger ending blow-up thing too, just like this one. This book gave me like mental whiplash though, in all honesty. It's like the polar opposite of everything I was expecting to happen after The Diabolic. I loved, there's like sort of time-space jumps as well. I liked how that thing was used in here. The ending third hurt an awful lot. It really hurt. It hurt so much. There's so much betrayal, and I'm Team Robot in this, okay? Team Diabolic. Like, I just feel so bad for this girl. Like, she's going through everything, and then like just keeps getting stabbed in the back, and I don't even see it coming, so it's not very bluntly obvious, but it makes sense when it does happen. So I am so thankful I read this closer. I mean, book 3 comes out in 2020, I believe. I think we do have an actual date. I can't remember what it is, but there's a cover on Goodreads for the audiobook format at least, and I can't imagine having read this right when it came out in like late 2018, I think it was, because oh my god, having to read this and then getting her information that the third one was being delayed, I would have absolutely like jumped off the deep end. Like it's a J. Kristoff ending. Okay, we'll just leave it there. It's fantastic. I liked this somehow, I think, more than the first one. This series is just really, I feel like, underhyped. I think the first one was a New York Times bestseller, but this was like a really quiet release, I think, actually. So I don't know how well it sold, but like, it's fantastic. Like, this series is just so good. It's such a good sci-fi, and the weird like time jump and like the use of religion and education laws, and it's just, this book was fantastic. I went out of my realm of comfort and picked up Sock Hill Girls by Claire Legrand, which, as you can see by my library sticker, is a horror film. Not a horror film, a horror genre. I don't think I've ever actually read a horror before. I don't know if Coraline is considered horror. If it is, that's probably the only one that I have read. I read that when I was younger. So I wasn't totally sure what to expect, but I feel like it has a lot of similar, like, structures of mysteries and paranormal mysteries especially. So I don't think it ended up being too foreign of a concept to me. I loved all the POVs. There's a lot of different POVs. There's a lot of LGBTQ plus rep in here as well. And I think my favorite character was Marion. She's the new girl that this family's, her father dies. I think that one's Marion, yeah. Her father dies, so the family moves to Sock Hill, which is like this off the coast little island, and people have gone, girls specifically, like teenage, have for the last like over 100 years been going missing slowly, and they never find out what's going on, and it turns out there's a monster on the island, and there's this whole like secret society clan chasing after them, and it's awesome. I loved this book. It reminded me like a horror version of The Wicked Deep combined with Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor, and I don't know that that's a combination of things that I ever thought was going to happen, but it really worked for me. I think I actually liked this one more than Claire Legrand's Furyborn, which I actually did enjoy that one as well, but that is a fantasy. So, I mean, I enjoyed this. Like, I was pleasantly surprised, and I'm not a horror person. Like, I've said this before on my channel, I like legitimately went into like bunker hermit mode when they started doing the campaigns for all the It movie stuff, and it's coming back because they just released a stupid trailer for It 2, and I'm just not here for clowns or things jumping out at you and screaming at you and like killing you in the dark. It's just, no, hard pass. So this was a surprising, enjoyable read to me, and I think I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. If not, no, maybe I give it a 4. No, I want to say I give it a 5 stars. Either way, it's somewhere in the realm of 4 and 5 stars. I really enjoyed this. So those are all the books that I read this week. Let me know in the comment section down below what you read this week. I would love to know. And, there won't be a Tuesday video this week. I was sick for most of the week, and Queer Eye for the Straight Guy Season 4 came out, and Veronica Mars came out, so I want to take the weekend off, feel better, and get back on my feet, and watch some TV and relax. I will link all of these books in the description box down below. I will also link all of my social media. If you follow me, I will follow you